Okay, hi, I'm C. Cummins. I'm using this as I'm taking care of my mom who's sick, and I'd like to try using a video. Before this week, I had heard of the Indian Child Welfare Act. I'd heard of it. I wasn't as schooled on it as I am now, as I'm learning to be. It demands studies, though, to really look at it closely. And I was very happy to hear about it after this horrible. We've been learning about more about the what the actual boarding schools were like, and then how these were definitely like child abductions from the government for so long. So I'm very glad that this came in. The ICWA came in. I was not. I mean, I wasn't so much aware of the Indian Adoption Project per se of 1958. I know that, like in the back of my mind, yeah, I kind of understood. Oh, I'm not sure what that was, but I did realize there was abuse of Native children and by non-Indian foster parents. But I do see ICWA as a reasonable response to the historic use of Indian children as tools toward Native American assimilation and cultural extinction. So it's a very, very reasonable response. And my opinion after learning more about it um, is that it's very positive. The problem is that I didn't realize that was coming up loud in the background. The problem is if there's 13 point something billion for like overall the US for like children, and I think it's like for families, child abuse classes, whatever. I remember reading there's like $13.8 billion, 13.8 billion for the like all of the U.S., including the tribes, but that only 1% of that gets to the tribes. So any human being does need, support and funding to help like families that are like at risk, maybe at risk for maybe drug abuse, which as we know from what we studied so far, that in the native, because of the Trail of Tears, because of the rip off of millions of acres of native land and taking away the sustenance of natives, that having it basically a trauma, that it has created intergenerational trauma, so that parents end up having a hard time. Actually, Indian parents do struggle to be good parents because of, for many, many reasons. Poverty being one of them, trauma being one of them, and not having any defense actually for against that alcohol or whatnot, and then being taught and abused by society, and non-Indians being told, oh, you're a bad person, you're dirty, you're terrible, you're awful, and then beating them. It's too hard to not ever have that turn around and go also hit your child when you're so stressed and poor and anyway. So we do know that the strengths are to honor that Native children, not to take away their culture anymore, to say, oh, it is important that they stay with their culture. Oh, it is, we're the ones that are being jerks that don't see that they're fine with their auntie, with their parent, with their family. If they can't be with their parents, say the mom or dad does have drug abuse. Well, maybe their grandma can raise them. Don't just grab them and say it's abandonment and tell them that they're unfit. You know what I mean? Like, that's too quick to do that. It's too easy, like an excuse for non-Indians to say, oh, that's unfit parent, or oh, they abandoned them. Well, no, they didn't, because the community's raising them. So I think the strengths of ICWA is to honor the culture first. It's stopping the previous way of, like I was saying. The weaknesses are simply because any type of support is actually not trickling into the tribes. That's for that $13.8 billion, for example. That's for all the children and families of the United States. Ends up only 1% going to Native Americans. So when I saw the Goldwater Institute, that's very tricky. And this I saw that little chart about the Texas and the oil and the domino effect and all that. So yeah, I mean, what I was getting from that is, okay, they had a couple points where, well, wow, this 2-year-old child, is the tribe's trying to take him, and they've never even met this other family, or so there can be individual cases where sometimes, yeah, maybe it is better to keep them with where they're already settled if it's already happened before ICWA started, maybe perhaps, but it's not. It sounds like they're just, I don't know how to describe this, but I was skeptical of Goldwater's position for a couple different reasons, and it's quite they're quite like tricky and brilliant the way they're trying to phrase that. They would like to get anybody would be on their side the way they're trying to describe it. But do you feel that they're truly fighting to preserve the equal rights? No, I don't. I think they're trying to get control again, themselves, to say, like, that's part of white supremacy, of trying to say, oh, well, we really know best. And this is like, because ICWA does address child abuse. It does address if the parents have drugs addictions or are harming in some way their children. It's simply saying that their relatives, that A, the parents have to be notified. You can't just abduct them. B, the tribe will place them within the community first choice. They have the first choice to do that. So no, I don't think that. So I'm explaining that no, they're trying. It sounds like the Goldwater is trying to say, well, we know best of what is actually the way they things should go down. Yeah, so no, no thanks. So do you find any merit to the information published about ICWA by the Goldwater Institute? I'm thinking that, I actually didn't read the entire thing. I was just reading a couple of anecdotal situations where an individual child, Indian child, was already perhaps used to, even one was staying with a non-Indian relative, though it actually was a relative, but they were like already happily settled. And so they were using these a few anecdotal situations that sounded reasonable at that time, but yet there must have actually been more to that story if the tribes were actually trying to get that to happen. So I'd like to hear the other side of those anecdotes. What was the tribe's reasoning? Because I feel like the tribe council has reasons, they have reasons for doing what they're doing, and that, yes, I'm glad that it's been changed to, because of these type of people, they're like reverse racist. They're like, they try to turn it on its head so they can be racist and say they're not, if you will. For example, not to over generalize, but like in Texas, they should have human rights of all the United States. That's tricky. It sounds kind of insidious, and it's a form, if you will. I'm going to suggest it is still a form of white racism. To try to go colorblind on you is actually also a form of racism. So I totally back ICWA. I think that if there's a way to, which there probably already is because it's not being mentioned by Goldwater, that the tribes themselves are aware of exceptions of if or when a young one is already settled or happy in certain situations that aren't on the reservation or they aren't with the tribal family, that I feel that the tribe can make that judgment. And so I hope that answers. Okay, and that's 9 minutes. Thanks.